If you're in the market for a sailboat, now is a great time to buy, with things being pulled in for the winter and prices dropping so far, in fact, that we're taking a snapshot of the market today, the $30,000 or less price point. I just got back from Annapolis, and if I was lucky enough to meet you there, thank you so much for saying hi. I love talking to you guys and hearing your stories, and this year was amazing. Next year, I'm going to organize a meet and greet so we can all hang out for a meal before the show. If I missed you this year, I'm sorry. My schedule was packed, and I wish I could have met you to say hi. This week, we're looking at boats for sale with a $30,000 budget, and for that money, we likely won't be getting a sugar scoop or anything fancy. But there are a lot of nice boats out there, like this first one, which might have the worst pictures ever taken of a sailboat. This is the Catalina 38, and despite the camera they used being about as old as the boat itself, she's in tip-top condition. This looks like an older gentleman who has owned her with pride for a long time and put a lot of money into her to keep her in near perfect condition. The biggest feature was the repower done about 20 years ago with a Yanmar 3G that's barely been used. Don't let that 20-year age fool you. It's only got 450 hours on it, so it's just broken in. This 38-footer was built from 78 to 1990, with 365 of them out there in the wild. So they're a very successful design from none other than Sparkman and Stevens. And at 16,000 pounds with almost 7,000 of ballast, she's well over that comfortable 40% mark of ballast to displacement. Her beam's just shy of 12 feet, which puts her in a very comfortable and heavy class of boat for her size. So she's going to be up for some heavier weather, likely the most capable boat we're going to see today. Aside from the new engine, this boat's been cared for endlessly. Sunbrella covers for everything, a radar system, some smaller solar panels, but we can upgrade those, and a full suite of sails. But they are getting older. The full batten main is about 20 years old. The 155 Genoa is near the same, and the 130 is about 10 years old. She also comes with a spinnaker and a pole to get you going on the downwind if you have the know-how to make use of it. She's got a new boom vang in 2010, new Traveler in 2007, and Lazy Jacks in 2016. All the upgrades sound lovely, but it's inside this beast that'll likely make it sell. It's gorgeous inside, and for a 38-footer, you won't be able to beat this thing in just about any price bracket under 100 grand, especially not 30,000. I know this boat's from 1982, but seriously, she's likely got at least 20 years of good cruising left in her, and you'd be so comfortable along the way, even when the weather gets rough. Plus, she's heavy and sails like a freight train. The upholstery's near perfect, and the woodwork, despite the horrible pictures, is top notch. You will, of course, be sleeping in the V berth if there are two of you, but that's how we did things in the 80s. The rear has a wide quarter berth if you're sleeping alone and don't need the privacy, but everything in the middle is huge. On the underside, she has a modified fin, so she's not too deep while still being heavy and stable. The rudder's on a stub, and she comes with a folding prop. This looks like a boat that the owner poured his love into for decades and is just getting out of sailing after wanting to keep the boat forever, basically. This is who you want to buy a boat from. This is an excellent example of what the 1980s has to offer, and for under 30 grand, I promise you will not find a bigger and better maintained boat for the price. The downside, she's in Wisconsin, but that means she's fresh water. She's likely never seen salt at all, and she'll likely need new standing rigging in the first few years, and maybe a set of new sails wouldn't hurt. But in all, she's a big, heavy, extremely comfortable boat that will always get you there, and she's perfectly maintained. That's Catalina, and the owners group is still there for these boats, but there was a direct competitor to Catalina back in the 80s, a brand called O'Day. And here is that competition to the Catalina 38, the O'Day 39. This has the universal diesel in it with about 6,000 hours already, so we know we're going to be repowering it almost right away, but we can use that to drive the price down. This boat was only made from 1982 to 85 with 120 built, but she's heavier, a whole 18,000 pounds with 6,600 of ballast, but a lower ballast to displacement. While the Catalina was about 43%, this is only 36, so she might be a little less comfortable in the big swell. This is a deep draft version too, at 6.33 feet, and with that keel, she should point very high. But this O'Day is actually all about the accommodation. This is the 3 stateroom, 2-head version of this boat, basically the charter boat layout from all the way back in 1983. It's amazing to think that this is how O'Day was doing it more than 40 years ago, and this is how all the new boats are doing it today. V-berth for the owners and split afts for the guests. This boat is a great example of one not being sold by the loving owner from the past few decades, where the Catalina was wrought with delicately explained details about upgrades and maintenance. This ad is very dry and sterile. Just a few facts about the boat and really nothing more. Not the age of the sails or no sign that the boat was well loved. Perhaps it's an estate sale and the details are unknown. What we can infer from this ad is that she's in fairly good shape but needs an engine soon. We will have to assume a few other things are needed, like the sails and maybe rigging. Also a freshwater boat too, but it's in Michigan, so the rust should be minimal, but it's in Michigan. She's a good-looking boat, and if you can get past O'Day's insistence on sloping coamings, which you do get used to after a while, these sail great and provide a lot of space and modern feeling despite the age of the boat. This could be from the mid-90s, and you really wouldn't know the difference. Those were both larger boats at near 40 feet. The next one isn't. This is a Sabre 32, and it's fairly fast, and it's just 20 grand sitting in Portland right now. The first big downside is the Westerbeek with unknown hours on it, but there's a lot to like about this boat. She's only 10,000 pounds and 10 feet wide because Sabre likes to make their boats fairly fast. You'd be forgiven when looking at the underside and thinking this was something from C&C because it does look a lot like it is. At 6 feet deep, the fin will carry you well to windward. I've raced against a Sabre 32, and believe me, they will give you a good run no matter what you're on. I was on a Pearson, and we couldn't keep up with the Sabre when we went to weather. We did pass him on the downwind, but we had the spinnaker dialed in before he did. Otherwise, we never would have caught him at all. On the topsides, we get door aids, which is nice, rarely something we find on a 32-footer. We get jib tracks and extra long coach top grab rails. I do question the different color side decks here. I have to assume this means some core work was done on both sides near the chain plate. So for 20 grand, I'd want to look very closely at it and inspect it to make sure it's watertight and it was done well. We also get an Edson pedestal with big lumars, which are easy to work on and cheap to rebuild. Inside, this boat looks very nice. We get nice woodwork and white upholstery, and everything looks to be in good shape. I don't even see water damage from what was probably leaking core. This boat looks very dated and mostly original too, and will need some work, I'm sure. I think I might buy it if it were local to me and there wasn't anything better available, but I'm not sure about 22.5, that being the right number. I'd be much more excited about this boat if it was about 15,000, and if I was buying it as my second boat, stepping up from maybe a 22-footer. The last boat I want to draw your attention to is Reina, an Alberg 30 sitting in California. Not because I think you should buy it, but because I think you should look at it. This was the vessel that took people around the world from the late 60s all the way through the 1980s. This full keel, solid hulled sledgehammer is what we used for circumnavigations for the better part of 2 decades. Carl Alberg's masterpiece. A rock-solid go-anywhere boat built specifically to be offshore in horrible weather and always get you home, and they always did. Living inside one of these today would be challenging, but there's something to be said for having exactly what you need and nothing that you don't. If you have aspirations to sail the whole planet on one boat that would barely be any worse for wear after a couple circumnavigations, a boat that is so simple to own and use and live with and sail, a boat that's already done that trip so many times it's not bothered by anything, this is the boat, the Alberg 30, the legend. I'd spend the money for new rigging and a set of good cruising Dacron and maybe a nice fresh diesel in there and just go. You know the Cape Horn wind vane, the servo pendulum self-steering gear that's guaranteed for 2 circumnavigations? How about that for a product warranty? That was developed originally on and for this boat during a circumnavigation, and now, more than 50 years later, it's still bulletproof, just like this boat. This is where we came from, and this is how it was done. So if you only have 30 grand to spend and can't afford an aft cabin sugar scoop kind of boat, that's totally okay. You're safer on this boat anyway. So just go. Go small, go simple, Go now. The mission here at Lady K Sailing has always been to get more people sailing more easily, and I definitely couldn't do these videos without your help. A big shout out to the patrons, people who give as little as a couple of bucks an episode to make this possible. If you'd like to help support the mission, please consider becoming a patron. Until next week, friends, keep the heavy side down, but not too far down. We'll see ya.